President-elect Trump not only claimed credit for Sprint bringing back 5,000 jobs to the U.S., he did so repeatedly last night, first in a tweet, then in press avails. Press asked for details, operating on information that we had gotten, that those 5,000 jobs were actually part of a larger deal that had been announced weeks ago.
Sprint tells us that the 5,000 jobs that you announced today were part of the 50,000 that Mazda announced.
Sprint will give you, I just spoke with the head person. He said because of me, they're doing 5,000 jobs in this country.
President-elect also suggested the media refer to Sprint's statement. In fact, Sprint later said the jobs were part of a previously announced commitment by Japan's SoftBank, which owns a controlling stake in the mobile phone carrier, to invest $50 billion in the U.S. and create 50,000 positions. Now, just to be clear, the 5,000 jobs Trump claimed credit for was part of a previously announced 50,000 job pledge by the parent company and its founder, Masayoshi Son. But that's not where this ends, because Trump took credit for that, too, a few weeks ago. On December 6th, after meeting with Masayoshi Son, Trump tweeted, "Masa said he would never do this had we, Trump, not won the election." Okay, so he's counted those jobs twice. But even if that were the end of the story, we have a situation which produces headlines like this. Trump touts new Sprint jobs that he already touted as SoftBank jobs. But that is still not the end of it. The SoftBank $50 billion deal was part of a previously announced Vision Fund, a $100 billion vehicle for investing in technology companies worldwide. That $100 billion global fund, okay, was announced on October 13th. Otherwise known as more than 3 weeks before the election. Now, the question is, would SoftBank have pledged half of that $100 billion fund to the U.S. even if Donald Trump had not been elected president? Washington Post did a deep fact check into that question. The dubious claims about SoftBank's investments in the U.S. basically said we may never know because there are so many factors, including the fact that based on past trends, it is entirely possible the same amount would have come to the U.S. regardless of who was elected. It also acknowledged the president of SoftBank saying that Trump, quote, would do a lot of deregulation that could favor investors, including himself. No matter what, yesterday Trump claimed brand new credit for something he had already claimed credit for, a deal for which he may or may not deserve partial credit, if that makes any sense. Joining me now, Bob Garfield, co-host of WNYC's On the Media and editor-at-large at MediaPost. His latest column on Trump and the media is online now. Bob, part of what happened yesterday is a familiar pattern. The president-elect claims a thing, says something publicly. Generally, when someone in that position says something, that utterance itself is news. But it then goes unrefuted or unrebutted or unexamined for a long enough period of time, and sort of hangs in the ether, and then you find out later it's maybe not true.
Well, you know, the norms have changed a bit. I'm sure you've observed this, and get used to this conversation because we're going to be having it a lot from border to border, coast to coast in this great, perhaps to be greater country of ours. And that's because Trump is such a liar. Now, all politicians lie. The president of the United States, Barack Obama, lies. Hillary Clinton lies. Clinton lies. Bill Clinton lied. George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush lied. All these people lie. But the thing about Trump is almost every utterance that spills from his lips is either a lie or built on a lie. And in a case like this, you have to get into kind of 6 degrees of prevarication to really understand the depth of the dishonesty. And it's dishonest on about 4 different levels, which I'd be happy to run down for you.
Well, so this is part of the issue, right, is that there's a posture that news organizations tend to have, which I think of as presumptive authority. And so you'll see it around police accounts of a police shooting. They'll say, police say the suspect had a weapon. And the reporting isn't, it's definitively the case, but embedded in that police say is a sense of, well, they're not just outright lying. Right? And then sometimes we see in some police shootings that has been the case. They have outright lied about what the suspect had. There's a sort of similar thing happening here with Trump. How do you report what he said while not lending it presumptive authority?
Well, there are ways, and actually, I think we actually saw it in the coverage of this particular episode, which is, how it's framed in headlines. Trump claims 8,000 jobs, right. And words like that. Historically, what the press would say is Trump snags 8,000 jobs before he ever, gets in the White House. And then if it turns out not to be true, well, then a scandal eventually erupts based on the falsehood, and then it eventually gets litigated. But now we have to, the default assumption is that Trump isn't telling the truth. Now, in this case, these jobs, which he supposedly saved, they were earmarked before he ever was elected. He has, as you observed, taken credit for them twice. 8,000 jobs is a trivial amount. It's in and of itself nothing. I mean, Obama's administration, depending on how you do the math, created 100 to 150,000 jobs a month for the duration of its administration. And by the way, this SoftBank is seeking to have a merger here in the States that was turned down by the Justice Department under the current administration. And one way to look at these 8,000 jobs is that they could be a bribe for some antitrust consideration when they try to rebuild the merger, which, I don't know if a political favor like this constitutes a quid pro quo for a crime, but it's certainly some nasty politics. So if I were Trump, I'd be keeping my mouth shut.
Well, but so here's that you also bring up another really important point, which is, in all these interactions he's been having, he's had interactions with Boeing about, whether the new Air Force One model was too expensive, and interactions with Sprint and Masa Bank. In all of them, right, these companies, if the company was going to already have 5,000 jobs here, let's say, it's not in their interest to correct the president-elect, right? It's in their interest to just say, yes, totally. This is totally about
what the president-elect says.
Right,
Yeah,
so
he's probably got it right.
You get this situation where you can't, like, the two parties that are party to the conversation each have a mutual interest in creating this sort of contract of fiction.
But let's talk about the reason I'm here, and that is, what is the press to do? Because we are going to be faced with this a lot. I mean, many times a week for the next 4 years. And how do you handle it? Especially when you know that if you point out the president's dishonesty, you will be seen by a large part of the electorate as being partisan and untrustworthy, and he will blame you not for revealing truth and facts and, actual, reality, but for doing a hit job, a smear, because you're the dishonest press. So, you just grit your teeth and you try to find a way to frame it,
right.
And you have to be ever vigilant, because now we have to truth squad everything in real time.
Yeah, the key to me is yesterday when we saw this and we had the internal discussion, we had talked about it. I said, well, let's hold off. Let's wait until we have more information before we even put this on the screen or report it, because I want to make sure this is actually a thing. Bob Garfield, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.